The Subcommittee on Water, Wildlife, and Fisheries will come to order. Good afternoon, everyone. I am sorry that I am a few minutes late. I just came off the floor, and this morning we have been busy in the Judiciary Committee. So I do want to welcome all the members, witnesses, and our guests in the audience in today's hearing. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare a recess of the subcommittee at any time. Under Committee Rule 4F, any oral opening statements at hearings are limited to the chair and the ranking member. I therefore ask unanimous consent that all other members' opening statements be made part of the hearing record if they are submitted in accordance with Committee Rule 3.0. Without objection, so ordered. I also ask unanimous consent that the Congressman from Montana, Mr. Downing, and the Congressman from Illinois, Mr. Boss, to be allowed to participate in today's hearing. Without objection, so ordered. We are here today to hold an oversight hearing titled Hunting and Fishing Access in the Great American Outdoors. I now recognize myself for a 5-minute opening statement. Today, the subcommittee will examine an issue of great importance to all of our districts and to the millions of Americans who enjoy hunting and fishing access on our nation's public lands and waters. Depending on where your district is located, the nature of access for hunting and fishing brings different examples to mind. Hunting at a national wildlife refuge, navigating the checkerboard of western federal lands, or state management of the South Atlantic red snapper fishery, to name just a few. I look forward to having a robust discussion on a range of topics today. Hunting and fishing are a way of life for millions of Americans and support billions of dollars in economic activities and species conservation. Under this subcommittee's jurisdiction is the National Wildlife Refuge System, a crown jewel of American conservation, whose full potential remains untapped for providing even greater access for responsible hunting and fishing activities. By way of just one example, according to an analysis conducted by an organization called the Delta Waterfowl, there are at least 100 refuges that should provide more access to sportsmen and women, but barriers still remain. I do want to commend the work of the Trump administration, which has, since taking office, sought to expand hunting and fishing access to the refuge system as part of the final 2025-2026 so-called Hunt-Fish Rule. This final rule opened 42 new hunting and fishing opportunities at 16 refuge units across more than 87,000 acres, thereby more than tripling the number of opportunities and increasing the number of refuge units opened or expanded by a factor of 5 as compared to the Biden administration's proposed rule. I also look forward to hearing more about the secretarial order on hunting and fishing access that was signed by Secretary Burgum just this morning. And I also commend Dr. Nesvik for instituting a full-scale review of the refuge system, something that is long overdue and an action that I believe will make our refuge system even better. I hope this U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service review focuses on how the refuge system can make existing resources go further and assesses opportunities for greater coordination with non-federal partners to better manage individual refuges across the country. In addition to America's lands, access to our federal waters is another important part of achieving the goals of sportsmen's access consistent with the goals of the Trump administration. In recent years, inadequate and incomplete data combined with heavy-handed regulations have threatened to limit access to America's fishery resources. By ensuring that regulations are developed using the most accurate and most complete data and developed through a collaborative approach where all voices are heard, we can increase Americans' access to our nation's waters in a way that incentivizes recreation while encouraging good stewardship. Lastly, I would be remiss not to mention that coming from a Western public land state, the vast federal estate creates its own challenges when it comes to providing access while protecting the rights of private property owners. This is one of the many reasons why I'm so glad that Brian Nesvik from the greatest state in the nation, Wyoming, is our Fish and Wildlife Service Director, and we are grateful to have him here with us today. I look forward to having a robust and substantive discussion on how to better manage these federal resources. I now recognize Ranking Member Hoyle for her opening statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to our witness here today. Hunting and fishing and outdoor recreation are bipartisan issues, and I'm glad we're here today to talk about how we can keep working together to support and protect recreation on our public lands. Hunting and fishing are not just hobbies. They're how many of my constituents feed their families, how communities come together, and how we connect to the land and our food sources. When we get young people out into the outdoors, it helps them build critical thinking skills, increase physical fitness, and gain respect for the environment and their place in it. It also offers an opportunity to build focus in their attention span and connection with the real world. I'm sure we can all agree that our youth would be better off being engaged in outdoor sports as opposed to being on social media or online games. Oregon's outdoor economy supports over 170,000 jobs. Nationwide, outdoor recreation generates $1.2 trillion a year. Conservation is good for families and good for our economy. America's sportsmen and women are some of the strongest advocates for healthy wildlife and conservation of our habitats. Congress enacted the landmark Pittman-Robertson Act in 1937, and the Dingell-Johnson Act followed in 1950. Through these programs, hunters and anglers pay excise taxes on certain equipment to support conservation. In 2025 alone, hunters and anglers contributed $1.3 billion that goes right back to states to manage wildlife and keep lands open. In 1964, Congress enacted the Land and Water Conservation Fund, LWCF, which is arguably the most important program for preserving outdoor spaces and improving access for outdoor recreation. Conservation projects in my district, like protecting the Yaquina Head Natural Area or the West Eugene Wetlands, could not have happened without LWCF funds. In 2020, Congress continued this tradition with the Great American Outdoors Act. It passed with strong support from both parties, and President Trump signed it into law. We have broad agreement across the political spectrum that public land should stay public and that hunters and anglers deserve access to the places their dollars help protect, and that the Land and Water Conservation Fund has been one of our best investments to accomplish these goals. We can build on this agreement to address the challenges that our public lands face. The National Wildlife Refuge System is the largest network of protected lands and waters in the world focused on wildlife conservation. While you may have to travel for hours to visit a national park, I'm lucky enough not to have to, national wildlife refuges are often closer to communities and more accessible to Americans across every state and territory. But the refuge system's funding is consistently far below the levels necessary to achieve its mission. A recent analysis shows refuge systems need $900 million a year to adequately maintain facilities, provide visitor services, conduct research, and hire the law enforcement officers needed to protect people and wildlife. But we've been stuck just below $540 million for a decade. That means reduced services, more closures, and ultimately less access for visitors. I'm looking forward to hearing from our witnesses today. I want to discuss how we can work together to keep our public lands in public hands, fund our refuges and conservation programs, get more young people into the outdoors, and build on our nation's bipartisan conservation legacy. The sportsmen and women who fund conservation and recreate in these areas deserve our commitment to public lands for this generation and for generations to come. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you. The chair now recognizes Chairman Westerman for his opening statement.
Thank you, Chair Hageman, and good afternoon, everyone. This is a great hearing that we're going to have today, and I thank the witnesses who traveled to Washington to be with us. The topic of this afternoon's hearing is of big significance not only to me and to my home state, but to millions of Americans. Throughout my career in Congress, I've made conserving and increasing access to our nation's public lands for hunting and fishing a major policy priority, and this committee has worked on a bipartisan basis with members from across the House, to pass bipartisan legislation such as the Explore Act, to reauthorize critical programs like NACA, and provide duck hunters with the ability to carry e-duck stamps. As we start the new year and celebrate America's 250th birthday, I look forward to continuing this work. This includes getting bills across the finish line like the Fix Our Forest Act, which will improve the conservation of forest habitats critical for sportsmen and women. And in addition, I look forward to moving a reauthorization of the Great American Outdoors Act, which will include provisions designed to ensure that reducing the maintenance backlog on our federal lands prioritizes projects that directly benefit habitat and sportsmen's access in the National Wildlife Refuge System and beyond. The future of the National Wildlife Refuge System is critical in my district, which is home to 4 refuges. Over the years, I've worked with U.S. Fish and Wildlife and my constituents to foster cooperative relationships for the betterment of these refuges and the wildlife that depend upon them. The best and most recent example is the Hollow Bend National Wildlife Refuge in Polk County. I visited Hollow Bend nearly 4 years ago after constituents expressed concerns with its condition and the significant decline of waterfowl using the refuge as a rest area, which is the stated purpose of the refuge. When I visited, it was obvious that the refuge had fallen into disrepair. There was only one full-time employee for the entire refuge. She was doing the best she could to answer the phones, mow the grass, clean the restrooms, and everything else in between. To remedy this situation, the service entered into a cooperative farming agreement with local farmers to grow rice and Japanese millet in the refuge. The relationship has been a great success, resulting in over 1 million waterfowl energy days annually for wintering waterfowl. These habitat improvements have been a great success for my constituents, and we can replicate this success around the country. I look forward to working closely with Director Nesvik to help provide the tools necessary to better the refuge system for generations to come. He has already taken steps to enhance access across the system, and just this morning, Secretary Burgum issued a secretarial order on hunting and fishing access across federal lands. Again, I look forward to learning more about this initiative, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I now recognize Ranking Member Huffman for his opening.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm glad we're having this hearing today. It's a very important subject because we need a conversation about what's working and what can be improved with respect to hunting and fishing and outdoor recreation across the great American outdoors. This is a topic that's always enjoyed bipartisan support on this committee, and I hope we can continue in that spirit. I think it's important to acknowledge that sportsmen and women have been at the forefront of public land and wildlife conservation in the United States, going all the way back to the beginning. We cannot have this conversation without recognizing their leadership. Hunters, anglers, outdoor recreationists, these are folks who understand the importance of protecting habitat, of healthy wildlife populations, and of course, they understand and appreciate the importance of public access. Not only for the recreational opportunities inherent in that, but for local economies, conservation programs, more than 2.5 million jobs that these activities support nationwide. That's another part of this important conversation. Americans are united on this subject. I know that sometimes public lands get disparaged as a nuisance, as a problem in some of our political debates. Don't tell that to the American people, because overwhelmingly, 74% of Americans want more public lands, not less. Programs like the Land and Water Conservation Fund and the National Wildlife Refuge System have enjoyed decades of bipartisan support because they deliver real results for communities, wildlife, and local economies. These investments strengthen rural economies, they create jobs, and they ensure that our outdoors remain accessible to everyone. So we have some opportunities before us, Madam Chair. We have an opportunity with the Great Outdoors Act to reauthorize it, as Chairman Westerman referenced. This is a prime example of bipartisanship, delivering real tangible results. It's made historic investments in our national parks and public lands, helped address long overdue maintenance backlogs while strengthening public access. And we also have longstanding wildlife funding programs like the Pittman-Robinson Wildlife Restoration Act, the Sports Fish Restoration and Boating Trust Fund, state and tribal wildlife grant programs. These demonstrate the power of science-based, well-funded conservation focused on long-term stewardship and not just short-term gain. So at the same time, we've got a lot of work to do. The National Refuge System has been chronically underfunded, as Ranking Member Hoyle mentioned a moment ago. This continues to be a problem. We're now facing staffing shortages that compound that problem. Half of our refuges are underfunded. These challenges affect everything from routine maintenance to invasive species management. Ultimately, they affect public access as well, and addressing them will require continued bipartisan commitment and sustained investment. So as we look ahead, let us continue to try to be worthy of that bipartisan legacy and tradition. Our parks, refuges, and recreation areas are experiencing record levels of use. So this is important and timely. And to meet that growing pressure, we need to work together to ensure those lands remain accessible to the public. I think the path forward is fairly clear. If we're serious about protecting public lands and ensuring continued access for hunting, fishing, and outdoor recreation, we need to use the Land and Water Conservation Fund as intended, and we need to reauthorize the Legacy Restoration Fund to address the deferred maintenance backlog. I hope we can do these things on a bipartisan basis. Look forward to the testimony we're about to receive, and I yield back.
Thank you. I will now introduce our first witness panel, which is Mr. Brian Nesvik, the Director of the United States Fish and Wildlife Service here in Washington, D.C. Under committee rules, Mr. Nesvik, you must limit your oral statement to 5 minutes, but your entire statement will appear in the hearing record. To begin your testimony, please press the button on the microphone, and as you know, we use timing lights. When you begin, the light will turn green. When you have 1 minute remaining, the light will turn red, and at the end of 5 minutes, the light will turn yellow, and at the end of 5 minutes, the light will turn red, and I will ask you to please complete your statement. I now recognize Mr. Nesvik for 5 minutes.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you, Madam Chairman, Ranking Member Hoyle, and members of the subcommittee. It's good to be in the presence of a fellow Polk fan. Anytime you're in Washington, D.C., and you can be in the presence of other Pokes fans, it's a good day. It's a good way to celebrate an afternoon. So, as you indicated, my name is Brian Nesvik, and I'm pleased to be back before this subcommittee in my new role as the United States Director, or the United States Fish and Wildlife Service Director. Appreciate this opportunity. The members have laid out very well some really important issues that I look forward to discussing here today. Before I begin, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge Congressman Doug LaMalfa's dedication, public service, and contributions to natural resource policy. I had the pleasure to work with Congressman LaMalfa last year on water management in California, Sierra Valley wolf conflict, and other issues, and his deep knowledge of the issues important to his constituents and his fierce advocacy set a high bar for all of us to aspire to, and he will be dearly missed, as you all know well. I want to extend my deepest condolences to his family, friends, colleagues, and staff. Regarding the topic of today's hearing, I am pleased to testify on the service's efforts to expand access for hunting and fishing on our public lands and waters, a priority for this administration. Sportsmen and women play pivotal roles, and hunting and fishing are cornerstones to America's model of wildlife management. America's conservation legacy is one to be proud of and is deeply rooted in tradition and strong commitments from those who value and use those resources. America's model, where wildlife resources are managed in trust for all of our citizens, remains the bedrock of wildlife conservation across the United States. Today, as you mentioned, Secretary Burgum issued a secretarial order providing clear guidance to all bureaus in the Department of Interior that federal land should be open to hunting and fishing unless specific, legally supported exceptions apply. At the service, we'll be implementing the Secretary's order by identifying new hunting and fishing opportunities on service lands and waters, cutting red tape for hunters and anglers, and strengthening our collaboration with states, tribes, and territories. As director, I'm also going to be reviewing any decision or plan that could impact hunting or fishing access to make sure we're doing everything we can to keep public lands open for the American people. The service is already working to expand opportunities for hunting and fishing on national wildlife refuges and our national fish hatcheries through annual updates to our station-specific hunting and fishing programs. And Madam Chairman, you did a great job of outlining this past year's accomplishments, and so I will skip over that in the interest of time. Looking ahead to future annual updates, my goal is that all refuges and hatcheries are open to hunting and fishing within 2 years, except in rare cases where conflicts with legal mandates, public safety, or sensitive species or habitats exist. Improving access for hunters and anglers also means making sure the public can focus on enjoying the outdoors instead of navigating complex regulations. We are striving to align the service's hunting and fishing regulations with those of surrounding states and local governments. Lowering these barriers to entry can help recruit, retain, and reactivate new and returning hunters and anglers and keep these traditions thriving. Finally, we are focusing on repairing and modernizing hunting blinds, fishing docks, roads, and other assets that support hunting and fishing access on national wildlife refuges. The Great American Outdoors Act Legacy Restoration Fund has been instrumental to these improvements, providing the service with $475 million from fiscal year 21 to 25 to address deferred maintenance needs on refuges. This funding supported repairs to infrastructure that hunters and anglers rely on at many of our nation's most visited national wildlife refuges. The President's fiscal year 26 budget requests reauthorization of the GOA Legacy Restoration Fund to ensure that we can continue to keep our public lands safe, accessible, and enjoyable for future generations to come. I look forward to working with this subcommittee to continue expanding access for hunting and fishing on service lands and waters, and would welcome the opportunity to continue the conversation that we have here today. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify, and I'll be pleased to answer your questions that you ask here today or those that you may submit for the record.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Nesvik. I will now recognize members for 5 minutes each for questions, and I'm going to begin with myself. This is something that I have been raising since the moment that I arrived in Congress over 3 years ago. Director Nesvik, last Congress, I asked the then Deputy Director of Policy at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Steve Gerton, if a petition to list the greater Yellowstone grizzly bear was submitted today, would the service list the species? And his answer was probably not. And I agree with that. Do you agree with his answer? And should the greater Yellowstone ecosystem grizzly bear be delisted?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And I do agree with the response that Deputy Director Gerton provided you then. And I've testified before this committee before based on some of my own personal experiences regarding the recovery efforts that have occurred over 50 years in the ecosystem that you described, largely on the backs of those folks who work, live, and recreate in areas where grizzly bears have recovered. And so I do believe recovery is clear, and now it's my job in this role to consider how we use the best available science to move forward with future policy around the grizzly bear, not only in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, but also in the lower 48.
So I know that there are 5 factors under the Endangered Species Act for both listing and delisting. It's the same 5 factors. Would you agree with me that the greater Yellowstone ecosystem grizzly bear population and the management program that is in place by the state of Wyoming, that it meets all of those criteria for delisting?
Madam Chairman, yes, and that decision has actually been made 2 different times previous to now, as you're well aware, by involving 3 different presidential administrations from both parties. And so now we do find ourselves, though, where the courts have issued decisions that we need to sort through the complexities of and figure out what that means to inform policy for the future.
Well, you and I both have read too many articles of individuals who have been injured by grizzly bears in Wyoming and surrounding states. How does an overabundance of federally protected predator species like the grizzly bear impact game species and the safety of hunters, fishermen and women, and recreators?
Well, in my experience, there's broad support for grizzly bear viability and strong, healthy grizzly bear populations in those habitats that are both biologically and socially suitable. I think where most of the conflict that you describe largely occurs is in those areas outside of areas that are biologically and socially suitable. When grizzly bears find themselves in habitats, I've experienced this personally, where they're in and amongst cornfields or in developed areas where there are a lot of people. Grizzly bears nor people do very well. It's not good for the grizzly bear, and it's not good for people. And so that is certainly one of the consequences of a success story where recovery is achieved in the core recovery area, but now bears have moved beyond that into areas that are really not suitable because of human conflict.
Well, in an overabundance of grizzly bears in those areas that are not suitable habitat, it actually places our hunters, our fishermen and women, and our recreators at risk of great bodily injury and even death, doesn't it?
Yes, Madam Chairman, unfortunately, there have been many cases of all of the above.
So at one time, the Fish and Wildlife Service described the greater Yellowstone ecosystem area as being saturated with grizzly bears, and there simply wasn't room for additional bears. It was one of the reasons that they recommended that the the GYE grizzly bear be delisted. And I think that that's exactly what you're describing as well. The bears have now moved into areas that are not traditional habitat, into more urban areas, into farm ground, and areas where they are creating great risks for our hunters and anglers. As you know, the state of Wyoming has invested literally millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars, to recover the greater Yellowstone grizzly bear. And the resources to invest in that recovery would not be possible without excise tax revenues paid by hunters and anglers. How does maintaining and expanding hunting and fishing access on national wildlife refuges, as you are currently doing, how does that benefit retention and the recruitment of new hunters and anglers and access?
Well, certainly, Madam Chairman, one of the biggest barriers to hunters being able to go out and take part in hunting and angling is having access. And so the more access that we can provide, both from the federal government's perspective as well as others, including private landowners, including state wildlife management agencies, and all of the other federal agencies, that we have a real opportunity to have a direct impact on those hunters and anglers having access and increased ability to hunt.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And the chair now calls on Ranking Member Huffman for his 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Nesvik, it's good to have you here. Thank you. Want to ask you about a directive that you issued on December 16th, ordering a comprehensive top-to-bottom review of the National Wildlife Refuge System and National Fish Hatchery System. The directive ordered staff to, quote, look for refuges or hatcheries established for purposes that no longer align with the mission of the agency. So I would like to ask you, what specific criteria are you using to determine whether a refuge's original purpose no longer aligns with the Fish and Wildlife Service mission?
So thank you, Ranking Member Huffman. And so that portion of the directive, that component, I gave the team broad latitude to look at the documents that were originally used to execute the acquisition of the refuge, and to look at what those purposes were at the time the refuge was established, and then evaluate that and make sure that that purpose still is the mission for that particular refuge and it's still being executed, and then to compare it also to the current priorities and goals and objectives for the service.
By that, do you mean the different policy directives that President Trump has put in place for all federal agencies through his executive orders?
Ranking Member Huffman, certainly that's a part of our current goals and objectives, would be the current administration's policies and executive orders, secretarial orders, all of the above.
Yeah. Can you provide an example of, I mean, you must have had something in mind to start this top-to-bottom review of all the refuges. Are there examples of one or more that, might seem out of step with those new priorities?
Ranking Member Huffman, no, I don't have any preconceived notion of any specific refuge or specific fish hatchery that doesn't meet those, but, I have heard folks indicate to me that this is something that is worthy of looking at, and it makes sense to me when you're going to do a top-to-bottom audit of a system that's so large like the Wildlife Refuge System and the National Fish Hatchery System, that it makes sense to look at the founding purpose and then how we're executing that now.
But you can't give us any examples of a refuge that might be in conflict with those considerations?
No, sir.
Okay, it's a concern because literally as we're meeting right now, there's a story that just broke on Punchbowl News that Republicans are going to do a reconciliation 2.0, and at the top of that list is a sell-off of public lands. And we've seen proposals to sell off public lands in this committee and in this Congress before. We've seen members of the administration talk about it. Can you assure us that, for example, your directive says to seek opportunities to achieve efficiencies in the areas of governance, oversight, and span of control. Given this broader context of sell-offs, can you assure us that this directive and this investigation is not going to result in the spinning off or selling off of refuge lands?
Well, Ranking Member Huffman, the intention for this order is in no way directed at trying to find lands to sell off.
All right,
in
but
any
I'm
way.
asking you as director, will you oppose that? If someone comes back to you with this idea, will you oppose that?
Well, Ranking Member Huffman, I'm not going to be pre-decisional or speculate on how I may use different information. I will tell you that today, we oftentimes have exchanges of refuge lands for other lands that are like, a similar trade that are authorized under Congress, like value for like value. And so there's currently in process, there's 3 different ways that the service by law has to follow in order to evaluate any type of change of use of refuge lands or disposal. And we have lands that are even not owned by the service but are entered into through cooperative agreements. And so bottom line is my commitment is I will follow the law.
Well, Congress has amended the Refuge Act, as you know, to generally prohibit disposal, but there may be some workarounds by spinning things off to states or private interests. Should Americans be worried that that's where we're heading under this administration with management of refuges?
Ranking Member Huffman, no, I don't believe that anybody should be worried about what this administration is doing with public lands. There's been nothing, as is illustrated this morning from a secretarial order, but strong support for access and for public lands. Go as a great example of support from this administration for public lands.
Americans should not be worried that we're going to see proposals to sell off or spin off or divest public lands or refuges specifically. Is that your testimony?
Ranking Member Huffman, I will speak specifically for refuges, and no, they should not.
Thank you. Yield back.
Chair now recognizes Mr. McDowell for his 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Mr. Neswick, thank you for being with us today. This is a really, really important committee, and I hate that that the chairwoman isn't using a duck call instead of a gavel. But this means a lot to people from Central North Carolina, where I represent, to Wyoming and Montana and all across our country. And I just want to say that I appreciate what this administration is doing to protect hunters and fishermen and folks that want to take advantage of our great outdoors and everything that it has to offer us, because it's important and it teaches things to different generations. Patience, respect of something that doesn't belong to you on public land, or respecting something that does on your own land. This is about respecting our great outdoors. It's about our heritage and understanding where our food comes from, because it isn't always on a farm. And so I'm grateful for the work that you are doing. But want to discuss your role prior was as a state director. How does that experience, how do you play off of that to know kind of how it's better for states to have more of a say versus the federal government in conservation practices?
Well, thank you for the question, Congressman. And I will tell you that, first and foremost, as I mentioned in my opening statement, wildlife are owned by the public. They're owned by the citizens of our country, and specifically they're owned by states. And the states have a public trust responsibility to manage those wildlife in trust for those people who own the wildlife. And so the state wildlife agencies have really the frontline role in managing wildlife within the boundaries of their states. And we have a role as the federal government to provide these public lands that we're talking about here today, specifically wildlife refuges and fish hatcheries. And so I think that the most important partnership regarding hunting and fishing that the service has is with those state and tribal wildlife management agencies, and maintaining those relationships is one of my highest priorities.
Thank you. Can you give some examples of species or habitats that have improved because of the North American model of wildlife conservation that sportsmen help fund?
Yeah, certainly. There's a very, very long list, and if you were to go back and look at the status of a lot of the big game species back in the early 1900s and compared them to now, it's absolutely amazing. You know, as numbers as low as 10,000 pronghorn antelope, and now there's well over 500,000. Numbers of white-tailed deer, I couldn't tell you what they were, but it's significantly increased, multiple fold, hundreds times fold what it was in the early 1900s. Same with elk, wild turkey. Even many of the species that are not hunted and fished have been benefactors of hunters and anglers contributing through the purchase of hunting and fishing licenses to the conservation of those other species as well. So America has a really wonderful success story to tell about how we recovered wildlife to a point where today we enjoy a tremendous diversity and a tremendous abundance across our country.
Absolutely. Switching gears a little bit, but something that worries me a lot is things like chronic wasting disease and white-tailed deer. We've seen that kind of travel across the country, and it's into North Carolina now. What are you all doing to address that, to help stop it, or what can we do to help you deal with that?
Well, that's a great question. That there's definitely not a silver bullet, because if there was, we would have already employed the silver bullet. A lot of the responsibility with regards to disease management, because it affects big game species that are managed by the states, it really does fall to the states. But I think, there have been federal efforts, bills that have been passed that look at disease task forces and some appropriations to help do research. I do believe that with regards to chronic wasting disease, there's more that we don't know than what we do. And so I think there is a continued gap in funding for, specifically the states, I'll tell you this too, to be able to do research that will help inform how we can get a grip on this disease that is spreading across our entire country.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for being here before us today. And Madam Chair, I'll yield back.
The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from California.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for recognizing me. I want to focus my time today to discuss the Urban Wildlife Conservation Program, which falls within the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. This program has been highly successful in increasing awareness of wildlife conservation and the National Wildlife Refuge System for families living in urban centers. This program has built 7 flagship urban national wildlife refuge and supported 32 designated urban partnerships. We have seen success throughout our country in helping ensure that Americans who live in urban settings have opportunities to learn about our environment and the importance of conservation. As you can see, this program has been extremely successful, from Texas to New Mexico to other urban areas, and getting youth and schools engaged in outdoor education. And I would love to see if it could be expanded to Southern California. Director Nesvik, what is your vision for building on the success of the Urban Wildlife Conservation Program in 2026?
Well, Congresswoman, thank you for the question. And I think you highlight something that is an important part of our conversation around the future of wildlife management and the future of just wildlife conservation in general. So, all of us that have some kind of a connection had some experience most of the time when we were younger, where we became hooked. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter if we're hunters or anglers or we're bird watchers. We had an experience where we were hooked, and a lot of those opportunities, like you've described with some of these urban wildlife refuges and many other state-led, federal-led, federal-owned, federal-managed lands, provide some of those opportunities for youth. So I think if we're going to ensure that we have people in the future that care like Americans do today for our wildlife resources, those types of outdoor opportunities and experiences are really important.
Well, thank you, Director. I hope to be able to work with you to expand these programs so as many Americans as possible have the opportunity to participate in them, including my constituents in urban areas. that don't always have access to outdoor programs. I'd like to yield my time to Ranking Member Huffman.
I thank the gentlelady, and Director Nesvik, I just wanted to follow up on this top-to-bottom review for consistency with Trump administration priorities. You said that you didn't have any specific refuge in mind as being out of step, but that it was suggested to you that this needed to happen. Who suggested it, and what did they say?
Well, Ranking Member Huffman, I've had a lot of conversations over a 30-plus year career in wildlife management, and certainly wildlife refuges have been a topic of many of those conversations. The specific folks that I've talked to about how we make policy decisions for our country, whether it was at the state level or at the national level, really is.
All right, but I'm
is
not talking
something-
about every conversation about a refuge you've
Yeah.
ever had. This is a very specific thing that you set in motion. This is very purposeful
Yeah.
and unusual. It's never happened to my knowledge. Whose idea was this? Where did this come from?
Yeah, there's no specific group or individual that's had this idea. This is a culmination of me gathering information over many years.
So this is your
and making
idea.
a decision. This is my idea.
Well, then, what did you have in mind that made you think this was necessary? Because when we talk about looking top to bottom at this whole system for consistency, with all of these over 100 executive orders that the president has put out on everything from standards for federal architecture to the dreaded catch-all of wokeness. I mean, there's so much in all of that. And to do this political scrub of every refuge to make sure everything lines up with all of that, you must have had something in mind.
Well, those words with a political scrub are certainly your words and not my intent. And no, I don't have any preconceived notions of any specific refuge or fish hatchery. But I think as a general business practice, if you're going to evaluate or do an audit and evaluate a specific unit or program, you need to look at what it was established for and make sure they're still doing the same thing.
Yeah, but you can't give me any examples of something that concerns you as maybe being out of step.
No.
All right. Thanks, I yield back.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Crank for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it. Director Nesvik, thanks for being here today. I appreciate your willingness to hear about the concerns I have with Colorado's wolf reintroduction program. This program wasn't done through best science. This was forced onto rural Coloradans through ballot box biology. From urban communities like Boulder and Denver that will likely never have an encounter with a wolf in their backyard, but they're forcing it on to rural Coloradans. This had serious implications for my district as reintroduced wolves migrate across Colorado, and frankly, I'm not happy with the way that Colorado Parks and Wildlife has conducted the reintroduction program. As we've talked about recently, there have been some issues with Colorado's management with wolves. What's the service done to address these challenges?
Yeah, so thank you, Congressman Crank, and I have heard from many of your constituents, and I agree that there is certainly concern in Colorado about the way in which the current program is being managed. We did evaluate and look at the original agreements that were put in place, as well as a 10J rule that was issued to Colorado, and we determined that their original 10J permit allowed them to go only to specific states in the Northern Rocky Mountain, population of wolves. And when we were made aware that they were potentially going to go to places outside of those states, I notified Colorado that wouldn't be appropriate in accordance with the permit that they have now. I've also asked them, in response to some of the other recent actions, to provide us several pieces of information here in the near future so that we can fully understand their program and make sure that they're in compliance with the memorandum of understanding and agreement that we have with them.
Yeah, and from the timing of that, I want to be clear too. They did it right before this new administration came in, just in early January. In my view, they hurried it, tried to sneak it in from Canada, which was not included as an area that they could introduce wolves from. Is that correct?
Yes, Congressman, that's correct.
So some lunatics who support Colorado's reintroduction effort have argued that the 10J rule and the memorandum of agreement apply only to post-release management. Do you agree with that interpretation, yes or no?
Congressman Crank, no.
Okay, does Fish and Wildlife consider the authorities granted to Colorado Parks and Wildlife under the 10J rule and the MOA to apply to the full scope of the reintroduction program, including wolf translocation and source populations?
Congressman Crank, certainly that is outlined very clearly in those documents. And there are agreements within the document that talks about how both sides will communicate on wolf management issues.
And so Fish and Wildlife has full authority in your view, and I would argue a responsibility to conduct oversight for Colorado Parks and Wildlife's translocation activities.
Congressman Crank, certainly, and they're a listed species under the Endangered Species Act, and they're operating using a provision of the Endangered Species Act, Section 10, under a 10J permit.
As of June 2025, 5 of the 15 wolves imported from British Columbia have died, a 67% survival rate. According to the state plan, a survival rate below 70% within 6 months should trigger a translocation protocol review. Additionally, a 6th wolf from Canada died in November of last year, and 4 wolves from the 10 released from Oregon have died, putting the overall survival rate at 60%. As part of the Fish and Wildlife's continued oversight over Colorado's management of the reintroduction program, I understand you have requested documents from CPW. I'd like to request that your staff look into the survival rate outlined in Colorado's management plan, and if Colorado Parks and Wildlife is following the protocol review requirements. Would you do that?
Yes, sir, we will do that.
Great. I appreciate you. I appreciate your oversight over this. Most of the population, quite frankly, of Colorado, if they had it to do over again, probably wouldn't do ballot box biology, quite honestly. And I know that the people who have to deal with those wolves in rural areas around Colorado never supported it and don't to this day. Thank you, and I yield back.
I thank the gentleman from Colorado and now recognize the ranking member, Ms. Hoyle.
Thank you so much. Director Nesvik, I want to thank you for being here today. I want to focus my questions on how we can work together to maintain public access for hunters and anglers, ensuring adequate resources for your agency, and protecting programs that sportsmen and women depending on. You know, there was a conversation about wasting disease, and although we don't have enough information, and I agree we need to do more research, certainly overpopulation of our deer population exacerbates the problem, and hunters are a really important part of that solution. So getting young people outdoors is critical to the future of conservation, and especially helping young people connect where their food comes from. It doesn't just show up in the grocery store. So how does Fish and Wildlife Service leverage its programs to introduce young people to hunting, fishing, and other wildlife-dependent recreation on refuges?
Well, thank you, Ranking Member Hoyle, for that question. It's certainly an issue that's always been near and dear to my heart. It was one of my main initiatives when I was in my past role, Inspire Kids for Life, and I continue to believe that those are some of the most important things we can do if you want to think about what's important for wildlife 30 years down the road. You know, specifically within Fish and Wildlife Service, there's a couple of things that we do, and we have many of our, on many of our wildlife refuges, we have youth hunts that have special provisions so that youth have better opportunities during certain dates to be able to have those permits or have those opportunities to hunt. I think that, you know, our work, we have, as I mentioned before, a real responsibility, but also a real benefit in working directly with our state wildlife counterparts and with the associations that represent all those states. The Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies is one great example. We have an opportunity to work with those folks to look at what does the new information and the new data say about the younger demographic, and how do we provide opportunities that will really resonate with those younger folks, because it changes. It changes from when I was a kid. I look at my kids now, I look at my grandkids, and the way that those things that resonate with them to get them interested in something new changes all the time. And there's good information on that and data. And so I think a combination of those two things are certainly places where the Fish and Wildlife Service has some opportunity.
Thank you. The Land and Water Conservation Fund has funded thousands of projects that open access to hunting and fishing. Can you provide an example of where the LWCF acquisitions or easements expanded opportunities for sportsmen and women to access refuge lands?
Yes, certainly. So, Ranking Member Hoyle, as you mentioned, that program has funded dozens and dozens of projects, hundreds of projects across our country. Many of them have been focused on habitat restoration or on habitat conservation. And so just want to be very clear that not every single LWCF project necessarily provides access, because many of those are conservation easements on private land, and so the private landowners don't always relinquish those rights, those hunting rights. But in many cases, wildlife refuges have been expanded, added on to. Some funds have been used to acquire wildlife refuges, and every time that we acquire or expand one of those refuges where hunting is a compatible use, we're able to expand hunting and fishing. And so LWCF has been a great program.
All right, then quickly, how does Fish and Wildlife Service prioritize deferred maintenance projects on refuges, and what role does public access play in those decisions, in the prioritization?
So, Ranking Member Hoyle, great question, and I will tell you that that's part of what this review is going to look at is, are we doing that the right way? Are we looking for gaps and prioritizing those in the right way? I think we always have an ability when you're talking about a large system to do better. It's not a criticism of past efforts. It's a way to look at what we have today, where we're at today, and how are we going to prioritize those needs, because there is a lot of variables that should play into those priorities. The number of use days, the size of the refuge, the wildlife that's there, the habitat that's available. And so we have prioritized deferred maintenance projects. We have a list, but part of this review will also look at that and making sure that we're doing that the right way.
All right, thank you, and I yield back.
Thank the ranking member. I will recognize myself for 5 minutes. Director Nesvik, thanks again. Thanks for all of your efforts. And as a lifelong conservationist and avid outdoorsman, I know how incredibly important it is for us to do everything we can to conserve this nation's national treasures in our refuge lands. I know how important it is to communities like mine, where I grew up, where hunting and fishing and recreating on those lands is part of the community. It's part of who we are. It's the connection that makes this nation the greatest nation the world's ever known, because of those resources and the things that we have been given great responsibility to manage. And I thank you for your leadership and the things that you've done. I want to highlight the Sport Fish Restoration, Recreational Boating Safety, and Wildlife Restoration Act that actually is going to reauthorize the Sport Fish Restoration and Boating Trust Fund through 2030. Those funds are important for, as we've talked about earlier, efforts that undergo managing those resources, not just on our public lands, but across the United States. That trust fund, since 1950, has provided about $40 billion for those activities. And very specifically, it provides those resources to both federal, state, and local entities to make sure we are working cooperatively to manage those incredible resources. I wanted to get your view on how increased cooperation and efforts like the reauthorization of the Sport Fish Restoration and Boating Safety Act are going to affect the things that you do, how our wildlife refuge system operates, and how is it going to increase access for hunters and fishermen that everybody in this committee has talked about is incredibly important. So I wanted to get your look at that, and then you talked a little bit about the challenges of the future, but what do you see as challenges of the future, and what do we need to do as a Congress to address those?
So, thank you for the question there, Congressman. So, first of all, I'll tell you that those funds, the Sport Fish Restoration Fund, is absolutely critical for our state partners. There, as I stated earlier, there are a lot of times on the front lines of these types of issues. I talked about wildlife management then. We were talking about more boating access and fishing access now. But again, they're close to the folks who are using those resources and using those facilities, and they really rely on these funds to be able to do great work for the American people. You can't have boating access if you don't have boat docks. And, there's a tremendous amount of work that's been done. You mentioned, $40 million worth of work that's been done to provide access. And so I think it's very important. I think the future will continue to require resources. And certainly that's a consideration that Congress can always make, is how to allocate resources, appropriate resources, so that those kind of activities can continue.
What do you see as the future challenges as our refuge lands obviously continue to get more and more pressure, but also what do we do to be able to enhance access through the efforts of things like the Migratory Bird Conservation Commission that take those duck stamp dollars and put them towards acquisition of more refuge lands, and what we do to work locally with landowners that may be willing to put their land into easements that are now accessible through the refuge system for the public?
Yeah, I think you highlight some really great, two of the best ways that we can increase access. And working with private landowners is absolutely a critical part of this equation. They're not making any more land. And you know what? We would not have the abundance or the diversity of wildlife we have in this country without landowners who are willing to provide habitat for those wildlife. And those landowners come in a lot of different shapes, sizes, and forms and have a whole lot of different uses for their lands, but they're absolutely critical in this discussion about access. I think, additionally, the demand in certain places has definitely increased, not only for hunting and fishing, but for all uses on these wildlife refuges. And so again, looking for ways that we can expand those refuges either through easements or work with private landowners is a really important key to the future.
Very good. Thank you, Director Nesvik. I'll now go to our chairman, Mr. Westerman.
Thank you again, Director Nesvik, for being here today. And when we talk about access, we often think of being able to go onto a piece of property to cross a line, but when I think of access, I think about the quality of access and the experience that you have once you get there. It's one thing to be able to go hunting. It's another thing to be able to go hunting where there's actually plentiful game to hunt. It's a whole different experience. I know that I mentioned earlier about Hollow Bend Refuge in my district, and over Christmas, unsolicited, I got a text message from a constituent in the area that was singing the praises of the refuge, and 4 or 5 years ago, they were complaining about the refuge. And he actually sent me a map that the refuge put together that they planned a youth deer hunt, and he was talking about how well it was done and how great a time the kids had that had a chance to go hunting, some of them for the first time, which to me, that's quality access to a refuge when you can do things like that. You recently put out an order for the refuge system to examine and refocus on the primary purpose of refuges. Can you explain why it's important for the system to refocus on the primary purpose, and what would you say that primary purpose is?
Well, thank you, Chairman, for that question. So the primary purposes for most of the refuges were outlined when the refuges were acquired, and they were never, it wasn't a system that came about by one sweeping action of Congress. It kind of evolved over time. Teddy Roosevelt established the first one in 1905, and then new refuges came on board, and there really wasn't any act or any congressional action that really covered the system until the 60s, and then again the reauthorization or the Improvement Act in the 90s. And so there's a lot of sources of what that original purpose for refuges was. In most cases, those purposes were to provide habitat, and a lot of times it was for waterfowl. A lot of refuges were established in the name of waterfowl, but to provide habitat, quality habitat, to provide hunting and fishing access, to provide access to the public, to enjoy wildlife, and then in certain cases to provide habitat for sensitive species or those that might be imperiled or threatened.
So some of the best land management that I've seen has been on some of the refuges in my district. Felsenthal National Wildlife Refuge has they do a tremendous job with pine savanna type habitat that creates some of the best wildlife habitat, whether it's turkeys or deer or quail. But there's a lot more public land in my district on the national forest than there is in the refuge system. There's a lot more private land where I live than there is public land. How can we partner better with other public entities and private entities to make sure we have a landscape full of good habitat that's accessible?
Well, I think that's a great question, and I think that's one of the opportunities I have now in this position is to work with my colleagues that oversee other, like Bureau of Land Management, United States Forest Service, Bureau of Reclamation, many of the other large public land assets that this country has, and to work with them on ways that we can work together. There are many cases now where that's already occurring, where we do have refuges that border other federal lands. So there's opportunity there. We also have many places where we partner with state wildlife management areas that are adjacent to the refuges. I think you actually have one of those cases either in your state or the state just to your east, where the state works closely with managing their property while the Fish and Wildlife Service manages their property jointly. And I think those kind of opportunities really bring efficiency, synergy, and doing a better job for the American people to manage those resources, and not just quantity but quality, like you point out.
And in Secretary Burgum's secretarial order this morning, he had a really catchy phrase in there. He wants to change our federal lands from closed unless open to open unless closed. I really like the way that sounds, but what's the problem with operating on secretarial orders? What happens? Could that be changed?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, certainly a new administration, new Secretary of Interior could certainly issue new orders that would make changes.
So we need consistency across time if we want to manage habitat the best way, because I say that as a statement, not really as a question, because it takes time to get these ecosystems in the best shape and to create these opportunities. I go back.
Chairman yields back. Chair recognizes Congresswoman Malloy for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I had two questions I wanted to ask you, Mr. Nesvik, and they've both been asked, and you did a pretty thorough job of answering both of them, so we might be really quick here. But I want to go back to your experience as a state director, and is there anything you haven't gotten to cover already about the opportunities of the federal government working with states and with local governments, partnering on making sure that we have access for wildlife, hunting, fishing, recreation?
Well, thank you, Congressman. Now you're wanting me to think back on what I already said and try to remember what I missed. Nothing comes to mind. I think that at the end of the day, speaking very broadly, if I can do anything in this role to better facilitate work, in durable work, long after I'm gone, regardless of which presidential administration's in place 10 years from now, if I can do work that creates a good, solid ability for the states and the federal government to work together on these issues that are so important to the American people, I think that's where I can make money. That's where I can do good for the American people.
Thank you. You've been in the hot seat for a long time. I'll let you be down about 3.5 minutes early. And Madam Chairwoman, I yield back.
The chair now recognizes Mr. Bentz for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Director, for being here today. So we have a wolf problem in the United States, and the problem breaks into two pieces. The first is the sheer number of wolves. I think roughly we have about 90,000 wolves in North America if we count Alaska and Canada and the United States, 90,000 wolves. We have 500 in Oregon, 2,600 in Idaho, and then, of course, the thousands in Alaska. Here's the problem. The wolf's not going to go away. That's a given. The question is, how do we recognize and reimburse those who are bearing the cost, which, of course, are the ranchers and farmers and others. But those costs are huge. About 126 million is what it's been estimated in 3 different studies that is costing ranchers across the United States each year. Your agency has been extremely helpful, by the way, in the areas where the wolf remains listed. And I know that your agency and in fact, the last 4 administrations has suggested that the wolf be delisted. So we all agree, the courts apparently don't, but the wolf needs to be delisted. But in the meantime, we constantly reach out to your agency to come in and try to haze wolves after they kill cattle and calves, as has been happening probably as recently as today. And I get call after call after call after call of people incredibly frustrated, and I refer them to you. Can you tell me how that's working in your agency?
Yeah, so thank you for the question, Congressman. And there's not, I don't believe there's a day since I've been in this job, since August 18th, when I haven't had at least one discussion during the day about gray wolves or Mexican gray wolves. And so I do recognize this is a significant issue across not only the places that oftentimes are recognized for having wolves, but really it's now in places where 5-10 years ago we didn't have issues with gray wolves. They've moved into a lot of new places, and so at the end of the day, you're right. I think that turning management of a recovered species and getting across the finish line there is the long-term solution. I think the short-term solution is continuing to work locally with not only our federal partners like Wildlife Services, but also with the states to enable them and provide flexibility, even with a listed species, to help deal with producers and handle their problems. Not handle their problems, they all want to handle their own, but to help them and assist them to do things they can't otherwise do.
Right,
I think that's important.
in an almost impossible situation. Let me shift. We are seeing an absolutely noticeable and incredibly frightening decline in mule deer populations across my district. My district is one of the largest that's not a state in the United States, about 70,000 square miles, almost bigger than the state of Washington. And we have seen this huge and frightening decline in mule deer populations. I would ask you to please focus on that. And then I want to turn my attention to the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge, which is in my district. It's about 200,000 acres. One of the people who has some of that land leased called me yesterday. He had no idea you would be here today, so it's fortuitous. The question he was asking is how come, because we are having an abnormally warm winter, the hay that's been, or the grass that's been rake bunched across the many, many acres of the refuge is remaining unconsumed by the cattle that are allowed to graze there, and thus is creating an additional fire hazard. And so what should happen is there should be an extension of time to leave the cattle there so that they begin. The reason they're not eating it now is the grass is still green, and for real, and that's highly unusual. But there needs to be, the people running the refuge need to adapt to this situation. Mm-hmm. We have an incredible invasion of species, weeds, across the BLM and, of course, the refuge. And I would strongly recommend that there be a more aggressive grazing approach used to help drive back this what is truly a huge danger, not just to the purpose of the refuge, because those weeds are not amenable to birds. And this is extremely important to me. I grew up not far from this. My granddad was involved in establishing a portion of the refuge. So I just would ask you to reach out perhaps to the leaders of that and refuge and talk to them. With that, Madam Chair, I yield back.
Well, thank you. I want to thank the witness for your testimony, Mr. Nesvik, and the members for their questions. The members of the committee may have some additional questions for the witness, and we will ask you to respond to those in writing. While the clerk is resetting the table, I will introduce our second panel of witnesses. And Mr. Nesvik, you are free to go or stay and listen if you would like to.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Jason Tharp, the Chief Executive Officer of Delta Waterfowl from Bismarck, North Dakota. Mr. Chris Butler, the President of the Butler Marine from Beaufort, South Carolina. Mr. Ryan Cal Callahan, the President and Chief Executive Officer of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers from Missoula, Montana, Mr. Paul Johansson, the Chief of the Wildlife Resources Section of the West Virginia Division of Natural Resources from Charleston, West Virginia. And again, let me remind the witnesses that under committee rules, they must limit their oral statements to 5 minutes, but your entire statement will appear in the hearing record. To begin your testimony, please press the button on the microphone. We use timing lights, so when you begin, the light will turn green. When you have 1 minute remaining, the light will turn yellow, and at the end of the 5 minutes, the light will turn red, and I will ask you to please complete your statement. I will also allow all 4 of the witnesses to testify before member questioning. I now recognize Mr. Tharp for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Hageman and Ranking Member Hoyle, Chairman Westerman and Ranking Member Huffman, and all the members of the subcommittee. Really appreciate this opportunity to provide testimony today. I come before you to speak on a topic that is of great personal interest to me and all duck hunters across the United States, and that is of the National Wildlife Refuge System. We sincerely appreciate the subcommittee's interest. Before I begin, I'd like to recognize that the committee lost one of its longstanding and committed members with the passing of Congressman Doug LaMalfa. We extend our sympathies to you as his colleagues and to his staff, his family, and his friends. The congressman was a champion on many conservation causes and was keenly interested and invested in issues important to ducks and duck hunters. We are saddened by his sudden passing, and we will miss his voice for conservation and hunters. Today, I'm pleased to be here to address the topic of our National Wildlife Refuges, as it is a topic we commonly hear about from our members, our volunteers, and duck hunters across all 4 flyways. I'd like to start by reminding the members that the National Wildlife Refuge System exists in a very real way because of the leadership of duck hunters. More than 300 of the 573 refuges of the system were purchased at least partially with proceeds from federal duck stamp sales. As a result, I and the duck hunters I represent believe that the refuge system truly is the duck hunters' most important legacy asset. The challenge is that our asset is under stress. Managing habitat for ducks is an incredibly intensive task. It requires trained wetland managers to design management plans. It takes significant infrastructure, pumps, levees, dikes, and water control structures to deliver and remove water at the appropriate times. And it takes human resources to disc, to run tractors, pumps, and structures. It is quite an undertaking. Today, we need our refuges to provide more habitat value against the backdrop of habitat changes in key wintering duck areas. Loss of coastal marsh, changes in agricultural practices, and water scarcity means duck and duck hunters need more from our refuges as core areas of high-quality habitat than ever before. The eve of our 250th anniversary as a nation provides an opportune moment to recommit to one of our greatest ideas and express a bold new vision to prioritize refuge investment, look for new tools to deliver management, address failing infrastructure, and redouble our commitment to enhance public use. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service current estimate of deferred maintenance is $2.6 billion. Work by Delta Waterfowl and Ducks Unlimited staff in the spring of 2020 identified over $250 million in critical wetland infrastructure needs on priority waterfowl refuges alone. We believe the time now is to act on this critical need. Senator Daines and Senator King this spring introduced the America the Beautiful Act to reauthorize the Legacy Restoration Fund, as we've discussed here today, which would invest in service infrastructure needs. And we are eager to work with Chairman Westerman and Ranking Member Huffman and members of the committee to develop a House companion to reauthorize the Legacy Restoration Fund and invest in the infrastructure critical to managing waterfowl habitat. Delta Waterfowl has also been visiting with staff to explore new authorizations for the service to engage the private sector habitat managers to aid in the annual management needs on the refuges. There is a wealth of expertise within state agencies, nonprofit organizations, and even private duck club managers that can assist with high-quality or high-value habitat management tasks, which would augment the service's staff capacity, and we're eager to work with this committee to explore this opportunity. And lastly, the U.S. Service Annual Hunt and Fish Rule has been a historic means to creating new hunting opportunities. And we want to say we greatly appreciate Secretary Bergen's announcement this morning, this new secretarial order, and we look forward to learning more details about the order and working with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service towards its implementation. In conclusion, we are grateful that the committee has chosen to highlight the critical nature of the National Wildlife Refuge System. Please know you have a ready and willing partner in Delta Waterfowl to secure a brighter future for refuges and for the ducks and duck hunters who depend on them. Thank you. I look forward to your questions, and we appreciate you inviting Delta Waterfowl to be here today.
Thank you, Mr. Tharp. I now recognize Mr. Butler for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman Hageman and Ranking Member Hoyle. My name's Chris Butler. I'm a father, a husband, an owner of Butler Marine. I'm on many boards dealing with boating access, including South Carolina Boating and Fishing Alliance, as well as the Center for Sport Fishing Policy, the Marine Retail Association of the Americas. I represent 2 dealerships representing 35 people that are employees and team members. I operate 8 boat lines and 4 engine lines. I've fished and hunted all over this country. Most 27 states on my last count, I may have missed a few, and 8 different countries. In South Carolina, fishing and boating industry brings in over $6.5 billion into the South Carolina economy and represents over 23,000 jobs. I'm in a very special place in South Carolina. I'm here because I eat, sleep, and breathe fishing, boating, and hunting. All 3 of these outdoors activities are part of the culture for the Southeast Coast. Decisions made in DC don't only affect the ability for access for me, my family, and my friends, it also affects my livelihood. I'd like to start by discussing the red snapper situation that we currently have. My business is affected immensely, both pro and negatively, on decisions made within the Beltway, let's call it. And currently, with the brought on of the Snapper Reduction Act, where we reduced the amount of fishing that we understood and we were there to support it. Now it's past its prime, and we have a problem now with having too many red snapper off the coast of South Carolina, creating problems for my friends and my customers to actually get to the targeted species. We are asking that you consider the EFPs that are presented to the for you guys to act, and ask that you look at those because they're a real way for us to bring in what the population truly is and bring it to the state level where we can manage it. We've been, in South Carolina in particular, we've been very aggressive on coming up with policies and ways to regulate and watch how that fishery is managed. The second thing that has affected us recently has been the right whale issue. Currently, that's been tabled, but based on what happens politically with the different administration coming in, we don't think that it will be out there forever. It will come back. That alone had an opportunity to decimate my business by 20%. That 20% number doesn't seem like a lot to you, but it would mean 3 to 4 employees for me. That's for 1 year. That isn't 20% one time. That's 20% over and over and over every year. Roughly $4 million of revenue to just me alone, and multiplying that out over many dealers across the East Coast, it would be in the hundreds of millions of dollars. We are the original conservationists, whether you're a fisherman or a hunter or a boater. We provide funds to help with conservation. Allow us a seat at the table whenever possible to talk about ways that we can improve what is being done. The right whale is a perfect example. Had we been brought to the table, we would have been able to bring in the new technology. We are working on that technology now, even though the right whale the speed limit has been stopped. As of today, when I checked, we have gotten $180,000 from the federal government. We have spent 3 times that amount, and we have not gotten $1 from an environmentalist organization to help come up with a solution. In conclusion, I would just like to say thank you for allowing me to be here to testify and bring a different point of view as an actual boat owner that is affected every single day by decisions that are made here, and I look forward to answering any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. And the chair now recognizes Mr. Callahan for 5 minutes.
Chair Hageman, Ranking Member Hoyle, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I'd like to first offer my condolences to the committee on the passing of Representative LaMalfa. The congressman cared deeply about hunting and fishing access, and his commitment to sportsmen and women will be remembered. I'm a lifelong conservationist, hunter, fisherman, guide, and second week on the job, president, CEO of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, our mission is to ensure North America's outdoor heritage of hunting and fishing in the wild through advocacy, education, and boots-on-the-ground action. Our membership spans all 50 states, 2 Canadian provinces, and 1 territory. What unites our politically diverse members, regardless of geography or background, is a shared understanding that hunting and fishing on public lands provide an invaluable sense of freedom, challenge, solace, a place to grow mentally and physically. More than 60 years ago, Congress, sitting in the same seats you are today, codified into law the National Wildlife Refuge System. In doing so, they carried forward Theodore Roosevelt's conservation legacy and created the world's most enviable and only legally unified system dedicated to wildlife conservation. Your predecessors knew a lot less than we do today about how our wild lands and waters operate. They understood that maintaining this system wouldn't be easy, yet they recognized the inherent value in stewarding our nation's greatest resources, not just for the future, but in perpetuity. Continuing this legacy means we have a shared duty to expand access for hunters and anglers in our great outdoors by maintaining our public lands. Across the country, public lands face a deferred maintenance backlog exceeding $32.5 billion, including more than $2.6 billion within the National Wildlife Refuge System alone. The bipartisan Great American Outdoors Act was a landmark achievement that began addressing this challenge by permanently funding the Land and Water Conservation Fund and establishing the Legacy Restoration Fund. The importance of these investments is evident on the ground and accessible to the end users, everyday Americans. In West Virginia, a Land and Water Conservation Fund acquisition recently added 963 acres to the preserved portion of the New River Gorge National Park and Preserve near Sandstone. Through a willing seller transfer, this project permanently protected scenic and historic lands while significantly expanding public hunting and outdoor recreation opportunities. Similarly, in Idaho, a Land and Water Conservation Fund acquisition in the Boise foothills connected fragmented public lands north of Boise, expanded access to a game management unit, and protected critical winter range for elk, mule deer, sage grouse, and black bear near a rapidly growing community. Together, these projects demonstrate how growing our public lands expands hunting and fishing access. LWCF makes federally managed lands and public lands tangible, a real thing for people in both urban and rural communities. This work remains unfinished. The Legacy Restoration Fund, which prevents our public lands and water infrastructure and the access they provide from falling into further disrepair, is set to expire. It must be reauthorized. Access for hunters and anglers is the difference between being able to launch a boat on a river or not, to reliably and safely drive 500,000 miles of road on federally managed lands or not, to safely get young families into the outdoors or not, to spend money with outdoor retailers or in rural communities and out-of-the-way places or not. Infrastructure, however, is only part of the equation. Hunting and fishing access also depends on supporting the staffing of our public land management agencies. Our public lands cannot function without refuge managers, wildlife biologists, foresters, field staff, and other dedicated public servants. These professionals are on the ground, maintaining habitat, managing wildlife populations, keeping access points open, and working with local communities and sportsmen for the benefit of us all. Hunters and anglers are not asking for special treatment, simply the recognition of our greatest American freedoms, our shared public lands. Protect our lands from sale or transfer so that we may continue doing what we have always done: conserve and steward, respect fish and wildlife through responsible take and habitat creation. By doing so, we can pass our outdoor traditions of respect and responsible use onto the next generation so that they will carry this legacy on to the next. I thank the committee for your work that you've done and are doing, advancing hunting and fishing access, and I truly look forward to working alongside each of you as we continue. BHA is at your service, and we look forward to a long relationship.
Thank you, Mr. Callahan, and I now recognize Mr. Johansson for 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Hagerman, Ranking Member Hoyle, and distinguished members of this subcommittee. It is truly an honor to be with you this afternoon and have an opportunity to provide this testimony. My name is Paul Johansson. I'm Chief of the Wildlife Resources Section for the West Virginia Division of Natural Resources. I also have the honor of currently serving as President of the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, also called AFWA, the voice of state fish and wildlife agencies who exercise primary statutory authority for managing fish and wildlife within their borders, including on federal lands and waters. Hunters, anglers, and outdoor recreationalists are fundamental to the North American system of conservation funding, and which uses a user pay public benefits type model that enables state fish and wildlife agencies to engage in their responsibilities as stewards of healthy habitats and abundant wildlife populations. Excuse me. Investing in conservation creates thousands of well-paid jobs and bolsters community resilience while protecting the natural infrastructure. Last year, states received over $1 billion in federal Pittman-Robertson and Dingell-Johnson funds, and I'm pleased to say that every dollar of which was directed towards fish and wildlife management, ensuring healthy habitats, protecting, improving education, outreach, and hunter safety programs, and creating additional opportunities for public access. Providing the public with access to land and water is a critical component of our conservation efforts. And state fish and wildlife agencies are committed to engaging and exploring those opportunities to enhance access to those resources. My written testimony provides several success stories from the states of Wyoming, Oregon, and West Virginia that highlight some of these particularly successful access programs. These examples underscore a very key point. When we invest in conservation and maintain access, wildlife populations thrive and participation increases. Such access stories show how thoughtful investments in access pay dividends to both people and wildlife. Effective conservation also requires close collaboration with federal, state, and local partners, including private landowners. We urge our federal partners to work together with the states to maximize these access opportunities. I'd also like to take this opportunity today to publicly acknowledge and thank Director Nesvik and his team for truly embracing this collaborative spirit. Soon upon taking office, Director Nesvik reached out to the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies and our regional associations and sought their input on shared conservation priorities. He also issued the director's order looking at a comprehensive review of the National Wildlife Refuge System and the National Hatchery System. And in his order, he specifically requested input and collaboration with state fish and wildlife agencies, and we deeply appreciate that. I see that my time is running short, so I'm going to move to some closing comments and refer to my written testimony in terms of some of the key points that I thought this committee should take a look at and consider, including prioritizing public access for the benefit of conservation, improving or empowering state agencies to work closely with our federal agencies, and supporting voluntary collaborative approaches to emerging issues. I would be happy to, once again, thank you for the opportunity to be here and happy to entertain any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Johansson. I want to thank each of you for your testimony today, and I will now recognize the members for 5 minutes each for questioning. I'm going to begin with myself because I think I'm going to probably have to go to another committee markup here shortly, and I want to make sure I have the opportunity to ask you questions. I'm going to ask the entire panel, would all of you agree that the recovery and delisting of a federally listed endangered species is something to celebrate? Would you agree, Mr. Hart?
Absolutely,
Mr.
Congressman.
Butler?
Absolutely.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes, ma'am, we want to see the Endangered Species Act work as written.
And
We love to
Mr.
see the recovery of a species.
And Mr. Johansson?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
tensions often run high, and I've handled several lawsuits involved with the delisting of species that had fully recovered and made sure that the management could be turned over to the states, as you indicate, Mr. Callahan, as foreseen and as intended by the Endangered Species Act. The process to delist is often clouded with legal challenges and trepidation. Successful recovery of a species should not be controversial, however, as it is a hallmark of successful conservation under the Endangered Species Act. So, Mr. Johansson, I'd like to ask you a question. Why is delisting a recovered species an important part of science-based conservation?
The delisting of species should absolutely be considered a success, and it is essential that when an animal is delisted and achieves that success, that state fish and wildlife agencies assume management responsibility and they have the technical expertise to engage in appropriate management actions, whether that be research or whether that be surveillance and monitoring or developing appropriate strategies for developing harvest regulations if there are species, a game species, for instance.
And I know you've done an excellent job for your state, and the Wyoming Game and Fish Department has also done an excellent job of managing species. A lot of people don't realize that even when a species is listed as either endangered or threatened, it is the state agency that manages them anyway. There may be restrictions upon take, there are restrictions upon what you can do, but an example is in Wyoming, the grizzly bear. Wyoming has invested over $50 million in the recovery of the grizzly bear, and it has been recovered for over 2 decades. For over 2 decades, we have exceeded the recovery goals of the grizzly bear, yet we continue to struggle to be able to get that species delisted. You know, what's interesting is the Fish and Wildlife Service hasn't invested hardly any money at all in grizzly recovery. I can say the same thing for the gray wolf, the Canadian gray wolf that was brought into my state. My state did an excellent job of managing that species, and we eventually delisted it, and they've continued to manage it very well. In fact, done much better than really the Fish and Wildlife Service does, because they don't have the hands-on expertise. They are not the ones that are in the state actually doing the work. In my home state of Wyoming, we are struggling with an abundance of recovered predator species that threaten hunter safety and negatively impact prey species populations, including deer, moose, and elk, as well as livestock, including cattle, sheep, horses, mules, etc. Every one of you have talked about the importance of hunting and fishing, and that's really the theme of the hearing that we're having today. We all appreciate our hunters and our fishermen. We recognize the value of the North American model, as my colleague has already visited, and why it's been one of the most successful models in the entire world in terms of species conservation. We have to make sure that we've got the access to the federal lands to be able to do that, and we all support that as well. But again, Mr. Johansson, returning to you, while West Virginia does not have grizzly bears, I was wondering if you would like to have some. Just kidding. I was wondering if you would be able to walk us through the delisting process from the state's perspective. Once a species is recovered, what does that state management look like?
Well, once a species is recovered, an authority reverts back to the State Fish and Wildlife Agency to manage that species. Detailed plans are put in place to maintain the species population, to make sure that they're not put in jeopardy again. They're closely monitored. There continues to be close collaboration with the Fish and Wildlife Service on those issues as well, and a monitoring plan put in place at a 5-year interval to make sure that, you know, we're on good solid ground with regards to managing that species. But at the end of the day, recognizing management authority of state fish and wildlife agencies to engage in those activities is absolutely critical. And quite frankly, I think most state fish and wildlife agencies do a fantastic job in assuming that responsibility once that species is delisted.
And I agree with you 100%. Mr. Butler, very briefly with you, your testimony talks about the challenges of the current management system for red snapper in the South Atlantic and the 1 to 2 day seasons it sets for recreational anglers, artificially limiting access based on bad science. How does the current management system negatively impact anglers and businesses across the South Atlantic, as well as the fishery itself?
Starting with the economic problem, it's affected just me alone about $22 million since its inception. And that would continue unless we switch to the RFPs. With the RFPs, I think what we're looking at then is we can have a turnaround of 15 to 20% in revenue. Some people would say that's a bonus. Well, in reality, I'm getting back what I used to have. It would also be a multiplier effect when you figure in tackle manufacturers, which we have 2 of the largest tackle manufacturers in South Carolina, as well as 6 of our boat builders represent 6 of the top 10 for the world of fiberglass saltwater boats. So once again, that would increase there. That's a multiplier effect with regards to jobs. That also what we've lost is we've lost that weekend person from our upstate in Greenville that would come down and fish all weekend. Well, why do they come down and spend the money when they can't keep anything and they can't even get to the species that they want to because we have so many red snapper?
So, Mr. Butler, this is a priority for the committee, and so we appreciate the testimony that you have provided in this regard. The chair now recognizes the gentle lady from New Mexico for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. And I do want to just take a moment of personal privilege at the beginning here to also offer my prayers and my condolences for the family and community and everyone who is grieving the loss of Representative LaMalfa. I think all of us have heavy hearts for Mr. LaMalfa, who was such an incredible leader on so many different natural resources issues and cared so deeply about this committee and was just a kind and good man. And so we miss him very, very much, I think all of us. Sad to see his chair empty today. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to have a bipartisan hearing on sportsmen's issues. Of course, I think everyone who serves on this committee and comes before this committee cares deeply about our public lands and waters and cares deeply about connecting with the resources that make this country special. And for New Mexicans, our connection to public lands and waters are also connected to our heritage. They provide recreation, they encourage stewardship, they protect the landscape, and define New Mexico's cultures, our foods, our ways of life, and who we are as people. We know that when access to public lands and waters is restricted, communities suffer real and lasting harms that extend far beyond just temporary inconveniences. In fact, during the government shutdown, the Pueblo of Jemez was denied access to one of our national park units via Caldera, preventing one of our communities from carrying out its many generations tradition of ceremonial practices. When access was needed most, it was not allowed. This is unacceptable. We've also seen troubling instances where recreational tours have been allowed on public lands that contain sacred sites to our tribes, including to San Felipe Pueblo and other pueblos in the Galisteo Basin, showing both a disregard for cultural and spiritual significance as well as tribal sovereignty. During the same shutdown, we also saw as the Department of Interior notified our tribes and pueblos that they were considering revoking protections for some of the most sacred cultural sites in New Mexico in the greater Chaco Canyon area. So while we share the commitment to protecting access to public lands and spaces, we also recognize that access to these lands for cultural and spiritual practices is also important. So as you can see, access is not just about recreation, it's about honoring history, culture, and generations of use. And I'm also grateful to the leadership of my colleague and dear friend from New Mexico, Congresswoman Ledger Fernandez, and to Senator Ben Ray Lujan, who have been helping to lead the way in ensuring that our national lands are made available for our land grants for public use for the lands that they have stewarded for generations. Our communities, especially in our land grant communities, rely on public lands for hunting, fishing, gathering, and other traditional uses that have sustained their way of life for centuries and generations. So, I do want to take just a few moments to ask our witnesses, thank you so much for joining us and traveling across the country. Of course, the Land and Water Conservation Fund is one of the key tools that we have passed on a bipartisan basis and which we are hoping to extend to make resources available to our communities to keep public lands and waters available. And so beginning with you, Mr. Callahan, I wonder if you could share with us what specific feedback and policy ideas do you have for us that we should be thinking about as we're thinking about the Land and Water Conservation Fund and its future?
Thank you very much, Representative Stansberry. That's a big question. I would say to maintain the long history of nonpartisan meeting in the middle and where we can establish opportunities for the American public around where we want to be, which is outside. We have an incredible mosaic of access, and the word access can't be used to represent everything, everywhere, all the time. We have a slogan that says, use the quads God gave you, right? Hike instead of ride. We need people to do that, but we also need people to ride, and we need people to ride horses. We need to maintain this diversity of access on our public lands, because that's what spreads out the pressure. And our public lands, specifically in the West, are seeing an incredible amount of demand. And our jobs are to steward these in perpetuity, forever, and pass down the opportunities as similarly as we can, as we've had them, to the next generation. It's a demanding job, and I don't have all the answers, but I promise you I want to be a part of the solutions.
Thank you, and I only have a few seconds left, but Mr. Johansson, what thoughts do you have for us as we're working on the Land and Water Conservation Fund?
I think, thank you for the opportunity to comment. I think what should remain first in the forefront of your minds when you deliberate on this is ensuring that those funds are directed towards conservation, making sure that that the focus is on what the funds were intended for, which is conserving natural resources, providing access for the public to get out and enjoy those resources. But at the end of the day, it really is about conserving our natural resources of this country. And it's incredibly important work, and I wish you the absolute best in the deliberation that you'll be involved in. Thank you.
Thank you.
The chair now recognizes Mr. McDowell for 5 minutes.
Thank you, and thank you to all of you for being here to testify before the subcommittee today. Mr. Tharp, I want to take a minute to ask you some questions because Delta Waterfowl is a group that I've volunteered a lot of my time for. I've been a committeeman and state committee member for many years. I don't get to volunteer near as much of my time as I used to with this job, but just want to say how appreciative I am of you and all the work that the folks like Chris Williams and everybody in North Carolina does for ducks. Because were it not for groups like you, we would not have plentiful numbers of different species of waterfowl. And I am grateful for that because I enjoy hunting them, and I hope to be able to teach my kids how to do the same thing. So thank you for all the work you guys do. I want to talk a little bit about something that I know that Delta Waterfowl's worked on for a long time, and that's the conservation of prairie wetlands. Can you talk about what the organization has done and how that's benefited the duck population throughout the different flyways?
Sure, and thank you, Congressman McDowell, first for the question. And Delta Waterfowl has been, throughout its very long history, which began in 1911, a prairie-based organization, and primarily we've been a scientific organization. We've trained nearly 900 master's and PhD students over the years in waterfowl science and have been known as the University of Ducks for a long time. And so we're a science-based organization, and we began in the prairies because the science began to tell us back as early as the 1940s that most of what drives duck populations, most of what matters in terms of the waterfowl we see on this continent happens in a very short 3-month period, which we call the spring production period in the prairies. And we commonly refer to it as the PPR, but it's essentially North Dakota, South Dakota. There are large numbers of wetlands there, and there are wins and losses in relation to that part of the world. For example, we have always applauded the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service easement program, which began in the 1960s. Over 30% of the critical wetlands, which are the small ones that usually go dry in June, and they're the most important to our breeding hens, have been conserved in the Dakotas as a result of this easement program. But there's more work to be done. Agricultural changes, shifts. We work very closely with farmers because they're one of our more important partners because they own the land where our ducks come from. 85% of the waterfowl on this continent still come from private property. So they come off farms and ranches. And so we have to work closely with those landowners to try to create, innovate, and come up with programs that work with working lands. Is essentially that's sort of our motto. Is we want farmers and ranchers to be successful, and we believe they can be stewards of water and wildlife in the same way they can our
When a
food.
duck is hatched, when a duckling is hatched, what is the single greatest threat to their life?
Being eaten, predators. We've talked a bit today about alpha predators, which has been an interesting, as a science organization, it's been an interesting program and project for us to watch over the last few years. More important to ducks are what we call mesopredators. So your raccoons, your fox, your skunk are the ones we primarily deal with. Part of the challenge of having alpha predators in the system or out of the system for as long as we did is our mesopredator populations have been out of control for a long time. For years and years, we've seen increases of rabies in the skunk, distemper in the raccoons. We see mange outbreaks that nearly wiped out the red fox population in North Dakota starting in the 1990s. So these are direct predators of our ducks, and so we need to address that issue. This is not a matter of small furry animals versus ducks. This is a matter of an ecosystem that's sort of out of balance. And so we've done years and years of studies on predator control, how to help balance the ecosystem and support our breeding waterfowl.
Can you very quickly, just to talk to, for some of my colleagues, can you explain how you all use the small solar transmitted, the radio transmitters to track the population movement of waterfowl?
For sure, and thank you for the question, and I'd be happy to supply maps and other visuals if the committee's interested, but Radio telemetry work has become very popular. Technology's improved. We're now able to do everything from, for a long time, put backpacks on waterfowl, but also there's now implants and other things we can do. Delta's actually working on a meta-analysis of all the telemetry work. We're looking to partner with folks who've collected this data so we can really start to get a better understanding of how migratory birds, at least the waterfowl, are moving around this continent and how they're using the habitat, which is part of why we're here today, right? Is the refuge system. We've talked about access a lot, but I think it's important to bring up what the refuge system also does is provide inviolate sanctuary for waterfowl. And this is super important. Recent work has come out about the importance of waterfowl needing a place to get away from humans to rest. And if they don't have those places, they redistribute across the landscape. And so the refuge system is an important, very important component of our waterfowl having places to go. So radio telemetry supports our ability to understand those movements.
Great. Thank you. Yield back.
The chair now recognizes Mr. Soto for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And, we are working on a restoration project for the Northern Everglades, including the Kissimmee Chain of Lakes, the Kissimmee River, Shingle Creek, and others. I live on Big Lake Toho, and I could tell you it is duck season right now because I'm woken up at, 6, 5, 4 in the morning by the sound of shotguns from many miles away. They hunt whistlers in our area, which apparently are fairly tasty, and ducks generally. We also have the Osceola turkey. So if you're going to get the turkey trot going on the eastern seaboard, you have to come to Central Florida. I was hearing some of your conversation, Mr. Tharp. How important is it for wetlands protection and restoration to ensure that we have a duck and turkey hunting seasons and making sure we can continue this thriving recreation that we have in my district?
It's absolutely key, Congressman. Without going very deeply in how wetlands work and what they specifically do for ducks, but for example, with our focus on the prairies, the small seasonal and temporal wetlands, and a lot of times these are not what you might imagine as wetlands in your mind. A lot of people have a visual of a 10-acre body of water. What we're talking about a lot of times is 1 acre in the middle of a field, of an agricultural field, a cornfield. These are the most...
That'd be a cypress stand in Florida.
Exactly. And so because those wetlands get wet and go dry on a much faster cycle than larger wetlands, they provide the invertebrates, which are the food for the waterfowl. And so they also happen to be the most at risk for drainage because they're small and they're easier to manipulate. So Delta recently launched an initiative as part of its mandate on duck distribution. And it's primarily the reason we're here today talking about refuges is ducks also need migratory and wintering habitat. They need food. We've talked a lot about energy use days. That is a primary component of duck management. And so not only do those wetlands need to be there, but they need to be productive. I think if any of us have spent any time outdoors, we've all seen what we call a dead marsh. And that's where, hybrid cattails have taken over. The water's turbid because of invasive species. And so we need productive wetlands. And then I would add to that, beyond human access and recreation, beyond the benefit to wildlife species, wetlands fundamentally are water filtration systems for our freshwater system. And I think it's also important to note that too is, I was told as a young outdoorsman, I can go 3 minutes without air and I can go 3 hours without shelter, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. And so we can all agree water's pretty important to every human being. And so clean water especially, and I think it's another component for our wetlands.
Thank you, Mr. Tharp. Mr. Butler, I see you're from South Carolina. Red snapper is another really popular recreational activity in Florida. I know they go all the way up the eastern seaboard, and we're working on improving the role of states and being able to ensure we have a real red snapper season in the Atlantic. I wanted to hear from you how important it is for the Legacy Restoration Fund and in fishing and in hunting and in conservation generally.
Thank you for the question, Congressman. that fund is interesting from the standpoint of that it is brought in by the people who actually use it, by hunters and fishermen and from outdoor people. I think the importance of it is that, you know, those funds get redistributed where they need to go. But not only that, but they're used smartly with good science and work with the people that have a stake in what's happening. I think too many times, I know I've been frustrated along with a lot of my fellow boat dealers and people within the industry where things are decided without us having a seat at the table with our ideas. And I think sometimes we're not, it's a bipartisan thing on what we're talking about here, which is refreshing. And sometimes I think that whenever environmentalists don't realize that we want the same thing, they think that one side's bad, and they don't bring us to the table to come up with our ideas. I think that's where things get lost. And the best part, or how we could move forward, is by bringing both parties to the table and say, here's a problem we have. What solutions can we come up with? I'm probably one of the few people in this room, I may be the only person that's seen a right whale. I've seen them in the ocean, and it was one of the best days of my life. Luckily, I did it with my son, but we spent 30 minutes with it. Not very close. You couldn't get close to it, but I saw it because of radar. That's how I spotted it from 2 miles away, and was able to see something like that. And it happened over 20 years ago, and it's never left me.
Well, certainly hunters, fishermen are a key part of conservation as well. I agree, and I appreciate your comments, and I yield back.
The chair now recognizes the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Westerman, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you again to the witnesses. You know, you all come from a broad background, but Mr. Butler, you made a statement that I think is very profound in your testimony. You said public access is not just a quality of life issue, it's the foundation of the conservation funding model in this country. When access declines, participation declines. When participation declines, conservation funding declines as well. When conservation funding declines on the water and on the ground, conservation and management decline. It's a vicious cycle that we're in with the need for conservation and the need for participation. And if we let that get out of kilter, it causes damage. I know it was in this committee where we fought in the Great American Outdoors Act to put some of the funding to not only to the Park Service, but also to Fish and Wildlife, to the Forest Service, and to the BLM. And while there's a lot of maintenance backlog in the Park Service, I see the what we call the it's got a really long name to it. On the new GAOA, I'd like to call it the Next 250 Fund, the fund that we use on these projects. And hopefully this funding can go more into conservation than to hard infrastructure, although that's important in places. And we had a hearing earlier today on our Reefs to Reef program about creating habitat offshore for better fishing opportunities. I know we've got a duck expert on the panel, so let's talk about habitat in terms of ducks. Mr. Tharp, there's been some recent criticism about public landowners doing management practices on their land, and the public sees this as they're hoarding all the ducks onto their property. Can you speak to the benefits of private management and how that's maybe a misguided assumption?
Absolutely, and as I mentioned earlier, Delta launched a new initiative as part of its mandate we called duck distribution. We identified 5 major components that are affecting how ducks distribute across the landscape of North America. And one of the 5 is currently the situation as private lands relate to public lands. I have very good friends that I know well in your home state. I'm sure you had these specific instances. A very good friend of mine owns property that's adjacent to a public WMA. He's spending untold dollars every year to provide the best habitat that he can for waterfowl. And right beside him, the neighboring property, frankly, is in shambles. Congressman. It's not well managed, the pumps are broken, so forth and so on. And so we absolutely understand and we feel every day, usually around this time of year, around the middle of January is when our phones start ringing from folks who are having those kinds of experiences. And it could be arguable at this point that we're actually very dependent on private landowners to provide food and energy. If you look at agricultural uses, there's a lot of conversation now about how efficient farmers are at getting the yield out of the field and what's actually available to those waterfowl. Whereas if you look at a private club that's being managed, you're going to see pristine habitat with lots of food availability and even refuge.
So you're saying it's kind of like the Field of Dreams, you build it and they will come. So my question is,
they will come, yes, sir.
why don't we build it on the public lands? And
Absolutely.
I know there are people, I know the farm you're talking about, and they spend that money and do that work because they love ducks and
Yes,
want
sir.
to see more ducks. But we could be talking about elk, we could be talking about turkeys, we could be talking about quail.
Sure.
We've got a poster here that could be landscapes all across the country. I know in Arkansas, this is done with shortleaf pine and blue stem grass.
Yes, sir.
Creates great quail habitat. You got the before and the after. And endangered species habitat, they love this stuff as well. My position is we need to see more of the funding spent to create these kinds of habitats. The neat thing about when you're doing it in forestry, you can actually generate money that goes in and pays for the next project. You know, if you're creating duck habitat, you're spending a lot of money, and there's a great public benefit to it. But we're out of time. Maybe this will be a question for the record. What potential do we have with all the public lands we've got? If we started doing active management like this, the wildlife population would go through the roof, which gets back to the cycle that Mr. Butler talked about. Conservation brings more people in, more people brings more funding to do more conservation so that we can leave the place we've got in better shape than we found it. I yield back.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, I'm going to recognize myself for 5 minutes of questioning, but the first thing I'm going to do is yield 2 more minutes to the chairman so he can finish his line of questioning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So anybody that wants to tackle that about being more proactive on our public lands and creating resilient forests and better wildlife habitat, and you can think about it in whatever species. You can even talk about it in fishing and creating better habitat for fishing. It all comes back to habitat. Let's start with Mr. Johansson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You are absolutely correct. Effective wildlife management requires good habitat management. And what we have seen, I think, is an opportunity unfolding in front of us right now. Let me speak for just a moment about national forest lands, which in West Virginia comprises a little over 1 million acres of public land that for years, and I'm not trying to be critical of our colleagues in the Forest Service, but for years those lands have just not been managed actively. There has been a need to go in and create habitat through appropriate silvicultural techniques and forestry to do exactly, while our habitat may be somewhat different than the poster that you have up there, there are definitely some similarities. When you're managing timber, you're creating wildlife habitat. You're creating opportunities for hunters to get out, hunters and anglers to get out into those public lands and enjoy those resources. It's all about habitat management. I couldn't agree with you more.
I think this is a Chugach forest, but you could find similar things on the Ouachita and the Ozark in Arkansas. Anybody else like to talk about management on federal lands and how we could do a better job?
I'll step in here, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity. We're Backcountry Hunters and Anglers is supportive of working forest, working landscapes. The response of wildlife to a freshly burned area, for example, has not something a hunter can ignore, not if they want to put food on the table. As does proactive forestry work, right? Opening up that canopy, providing early successional growth, et cetera, is fantastic for wildlife. One thing that we've seen is a fear of fire return to the west, whereas there's so many good examples in the east of active fire as a tool, and BHA would be an advocate for using all the tools available to us and not restricting those.
Madam Chair, I want to be respectful of your time you yielded.
Thank you. Mr. Butler, the chairwoman asked you about the short season for red snapper, and you talked about the economic impact that has. Do you want to take just a minute and talk about how having a 2-day season might contribute to bad data that then justifies a short season and keeps the cycle going?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, the crazy thing is this is one of those ironic moments where NOAA determines small craft advisories and also is over top of what comes with the fishing season. And we'll get 1 day or 2 day. And if we get bad weather with small craft advisories, that puts people at a position of, I can't fish, I shouldn't fish, but all of a sudden I have to fish, even though it may be dangerous, because that's the only day I have, and there's not a blowout day listed at another time. By doing that, then exactly how do you get data from people that didn't go fishing? What data do you use? And the same question I always have is, I've only met one person in 30 years of saltwater fishing that's ever actually been asked by NOAA what they caught. So I don't know where the data comes from. Whereas today, with South Carolina getting ready to manage that, hopefully manage that fishery coming up, we're already set up to work it on an app where we can get real-time data on what's been caught, mortality rates, that can give us good data to then decide what really is actually happening out there to make better decisions, obviously.
Thank you. I've got a really short amount of time left, but Mr. Tharp, Mr. Johansson, I think you both mentioned in your testimony the open unless otherwise closed policy and how helpful that would be. Do either one of you want to quickly, in just a few seconds, address why that's so important?
I'll very quickly, Congressman, thanks for the question. We now understand that recruitment is linked implicitly with access. We can't begin to recruit the numbers we need to secure the future of hunting in North America unless they have places to go. And so that's a key bottleneck, and so we need that access to the public, for the public.
Thank you. That was quick. I appreciate it. The chair now recognizes Ms. Radewagen for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I want to thank the witnesses for being here today. Mr. Johansson, access to hunting and fishing is the right of the American public and a critical economic driver and conservation tool. How does expanding access on public lands translate into real economic and conservation benefits for rural states and territories?
Well, thank you very much for that question, and I can certainly speak as a rural state in West Virginia. Having the opportunity to put hunters and anglers on public lands and waters is absolutely essential in terms of generating license sales, for instance, which is a key component of every state fish and wildlife agency in the country to be able to plow that money back into good conservation work on the ground and on the waters. Access is also essential to maintaining the tradition, I believe, of particularly in rural communities, the tradition associated with getting folks on the land and on that property. The other component in a state like West Virginia, which is just so rural, having the opportunity to put people on the ground and enjoy those resources provides enormous benefits to the local small rural economies where, and I'm certainly not an economist, but what I understand is when monies are plowed into those rural economies, they tend to circulate more and more and have great economic benefits. And I can tell you, for certain. When buck season rolls around in West Virginia, many of our small mom and pop stores, they view that as the lifeblood of their business. You know, getting the opportunity to bring people in, buy gasoline, buy groceries, that sort of thing. It just invigorates those small economies, and it just terribly important.
Mr. Tharp, how does providing meaningful hunting and fishing access on refugees help build public support for wetlands conservation and the refuge system itself?
It's a great question, Congresswoman, and I think one of your fellow members spoke to the urban program that the service has with the refuge system. And as I spoke to earlier, wetlands play an extremely vital role in capturing carbon, nitrates and phosphates, runoff, and those sorts of things. They have a fundamental role in cleaning our nation's water. And so it's very important that we educate the public on those benefits. And so having refuges where you can take elementary school kids, high school kids, for example, Delta has a program, we call it the University Hunt Program. In the 1980s, 70% of the kids who came into wildlife programs at university came from hunting and fishing backgrounds. Today, that's completely opposite. 70% of the undergrads have never had that experience. And so we started a program to educate, but generally we're working with the professor at the university. We need a place to take the kids. And so the public lands are the places that we generally depend on unless we have the generosity of a private landowner. And it also, these are students in the wildlife program who are likely going to take roles, jobs within the service, within the state agencies. And so it helps them sort of complete the circle of the North American model. And part of that is teaching them about the importance of wetlands.
Thank you. Very quickly, Mr. Butler, your testimony highlights the challenge that fisheries face due to the precautionary principle, which is a challenge that our fisheries in the Pacific has faced as well. Can you expand on how the application of this principle has negatively impacted fishing communities across the United States?
Yes, thank you very much, Congressman, for the question. The shortened days have obviously, just as I had talked about before, really brought bad data out, whereas longer seasons give people, calm them down and allow them to pick the days that work best for them to go out and enjoy the natural resources that we have. With that, they also will be able to get better data by what the catch is over time. And if that data is, that science comes in properly and is measured properly, we can then make better decisions. I am like about every other American. If you give me bad information, I can guarantee you a bad decision. But if you give me the right information, I will get it right at least 50% of the time, maybe even 75. So data is the key. And if we don't get that data, we can't make good decisions. So it's very important that we are given the time to collect that data by giving longer seasons. We're asking for 62 days. And apart from the economic benefit, I think what you'll see on the federal side with the data that we get will be very impressive and accurate to make better informed decisions. And let's be honest, who knows your backyard better than you? It's the same way for the state. The state of South Carolina, I promise, knows that coastline and their fisheries better than what the federal government does because they don't have all the other states to deal with. They have one.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Yield back.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Mr. Wahlberg for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to the panel for being here. And Mr. Butler, if NOAA doesn't report, I'll report the fact that I cut my ice hole, augured it too small, and I couldn't get the fish out 2 weeks ago. If you believe that, you know I'm not a fisherman, but I am. So coming from the Great Lakes state, access to hunting and fishing isn't a luxury, it's a way of life. Recreational fishing in the Great Lakes support significant projects, $5 billion worth annually in economic benefit and supports thousands of jobs in the region. Thousands of visitors come who want to cast a line, hoping to catch legendary Lake Michigan lake trout and salmon, or Lake Erie perch and walleye. But hunting and fishing access isn't just about whether a gate is open or a boat ramp exists or the augured hole is large enough. It's also about whether there are fish in the water. And when wildlife policy fails, access in name only becomes a reality on the ground or on the water. A clear example is the federal government's mismanagement, in my opinion, of double-crested cormorants. These birds are protected under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, yet the populations have exploded well beyond historic levels. In the Great Lakes and inland waters like those in Michigan, unchecked cormorant predation has significantly impacted local fisheries, wiping out stockfish, degrading habitat, and reducing recreational fishing opportunities. And has been pointed out earlier and throughout this hearing, when anglers stop catching fish, they stop showing up. Charter operations shut down, mom and pop bait shops are impacted negatively by that. Families lose access to very opportunities that they were charged with protecting, and many of the fishermen I talked to expressed concern about the lack of responsible management of the cormorant, and we continue that talking about it in the duck blind. Mr. Johansson, based on your experience, how does unchecked predator depredation, particularly from double-crested cormorants that are moving east, affect fish populations, angler success, and ultimately whether recreational fishermen having a meaningful opportunity to fish? And when those fisheries are degraded, what does that mean for participation, charter activity, local economies, et cetera, who depend upon recreational access?
Well, thank you for that question. I'm certainly not an expert on cormorants, but I'm familiar with the situation. And when you have an unchecked population that engages in significant depredation of native fish stocks, or in the case of hatchery rearing facilities, they can certainly have a significant impact on that resource.
And they are. This is, this is something we need to talk about. And for too long, we've just accepted the status quo. But being out on a fishing boat, going for walleye or perch, and seeing cormorants, that amazing predation that they're doing on that population with the fry, and in the access with the fisheries, the hatcheries as well, what they're doing. And then as I said, hunting duck and seeing cormorants, the black spot in the sky, and all of a sudden, just the increased numbers that are there. I think we have to get serious about that, so that's why I bring it up today. Mr. Johansson, continuing on, would you agree that when federal policies limit states' ability to manage predator populations effectively, it effectively reduces fishing access by eliminating or severely degrading the resource itself?
Am I on? So, yeah, I would agree that there needs to be a strong recognition of state authority for managing wildlife resources, and many times that can be done in partnership with the appropriate federal agencies. But certainly, early engagement with state fish and wildlife agencies, I think, is key to resolving many of these problems. Don't invite the states to the table after the dinner's already been served. Let's get in there early with a conversation. Let's have it an open and robust and a collaborative effort to address these issues. And many of these issues, as you indicate, are certainly significant.
Yeah. And we've done that with the states and have great openness. It's the feds we're having trouble with now. So we'll keep pushing. Thanks so much. I yield back.
Well, I want to thank the witnesses for their valuable testimony and members for their questions. The members of the committee may have additional questions, and we'll ask you to respond to those in writing. Under Committee Rule 3, members of the committee must submit questions to the subcommittee clerk by 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday, January 16th. The hearing record will be held open for 10 business days for these responses. Without objection, the subcommittee stands adjourned.